event will be in English, and I hope you saw this announcement. So, welcome again, everyone. Thanks for coming, and thanks for your interest in this topic. I would like to thank the team of Kyiv Biennale, and also especially the team of Visual Culture Research Center who made this event possible. And I want to thank our amazing participants who made their way to Kyiv, and hopefully we will have a very interesting discussion today. So I would like to say a couple of words about the concept of this event and why we are talking about artificial intelligence, big data, and Europe after Chernobyl. Our symposium today is focused on the topic of communicative militarism. And I would like to use a phrase that serves as a logo for this discussion. You may not be interested in cyber war, but cyber war is interested in you. Cyber war is, of course, a very complex concept and event, and many people from different fields understand it in a very different way. But several of us in media studies thought that this is time to offer a new, maybe more complex understanding of cyber war that includes very different events that, for example, cybersecurity specialists never considered as part of cyber war, that also extend the idea of cyber war to maybe beyond battlefields, to certain scenarios that look so peaceful and so calm, but yet are related to militarization. So in the center of these discussions is user, and also user's mental state, and also the function of a user in this very complex assemblage of cyber war. And I think our first speaker, Geert Lovink, who I'm going to introduce in a minute, will actually address the mental state of a user. And together, after his presentation, we can think about the relation of the mental state of a user in relation to these new forms of militarism, aggression that some of us identify as cyber war. So Geert Lovink is a Dutch media theorist, internet critic, and author of Uncanny Networks from 2002, Dark Fiber from 2002, My First Recession from 2003, Zero Comments 2007, Networks Without a Pause, Social Media Abyss from 2016, and his latest book, Set by Design from 2019. In 2004, he founded the Institute of Network Cultures at the Amsterdam University of Applied Sciences. His center organizes conferences, publications, and research networks such as Video Vortex, Online Video, Unlike Us, Alternatives in Social Media, Critical Point of View on Wikipedia, Society of Query on the Culture of Search, MindLab, Internet-based revenue models in the arts. Recent projects deal with digital publication and the future of art criticism. So please welcome Geert Lovink.
I'm going to give you a short introduction about the work that we do at the Institute, and it's also an invitation very much for you, if you're working in these fields, to join one of the networks. There's many ways, we can collaborate, maybe publish your work. We have a lot of emphasis on publishing, especially work of young people in our field. This is very important for us. So you can join these networks on one of the topics that were mentioned. And often we come together, or there's other ways to collaborate. And also, if you want to come to Amsterdam, please visit us. Or if you want to be, have an internship or something like that, we're very open for that. So please consider this also as an invitation. And the first kind of introduction. So please, you can approach me. My email is well known. So, please, if you have some more questions or some proposal, please write to me. Geert@accessforall.nl. So it's a real pleasure to be here in Kiev. In fact, it's only my second visit to your town and your country. First time was 1995, so that it's really, I realized it's 24 years ago, so that's a long time. But anyway, I'm back. So I'm really proud to present you the current work that we are doing. Okay, so this is the website of the Institute if you want to keep informed. Well, we have a monthly newsletter. Obviously, I myself, this is also announced in a big way. I left Facebook in 2010 in the first big protest against the privacy violations of Facebook. At the time, we were with 50,000 people and left Facebook. Okay, that's a long time ago, that's 9 years ago. The Institute itself, I think, left Facebook in 15 or something like that, when we again organized a big campaign against Facebook. And we organized the Facebook farewell party and so on and so on. Okay, so we are not using those types of social media, but obviously we're very much involved in what's going on. Okay, so here are some of the all the books that were mentioned. This is in a nutshell, kind of very simple method, maybe anti-method. I don't like methods, so this kind of describes for us. We build up networks around these topics, and then organize events and publications. Very simple thing to do. Anyway, don't think that we are a kind of a big established place. We are with 3 or 4 people in one room. Okay, so so this is what we are, and we try to use the resources that we have in a good way. We just had Video Vortex number 12. This is our oldest network. Previous ones were in Lüneburg in Germany, and but also in Indonesia, and the last one before was in the south of India in Kerala. So this is a real global network of people that work on the politics and aesthetics of YouTube. Obviously, when you study YouTube, it's quite different from, let's say, film studies or television studies. And this is, what intrigues us. What does it mean when Lev Manwitz says, okay, we are watching a database? What does that mean? Now, already 15, 20 years into this phenomena, right? Online video is in fact quite old. It's way older, of course, than YouTube itself. But where is our thinking? Where is our critical thinking? Where is our Vertov, let's say? Who is going to formulate the contemporary rules of aesthetics that can be applied to this space? This space that is inhabited literally by billions of people on a daily basis, right? And the theorization, I have to admit, 20, 30 years later, we are still at the very beginning. It's very poor, right? So please see this also as an invitation. The world is waiting for you. the reflection, the critical reflection on internet culture is by and large still very, very primitive, right? And there's an enormous abundance of practice, let's say, and of course a diminishing amount of critical thinking. Why? Because critical thinking is not very popular. You can't make money with it, obviously. So that's a problem. So here's an older project about search engines, another one about critical Wikipedia studies. And this is the one that we're running at the moment. It's called Money Lab. And it's a response to the financial crisis in 2008. Of course, that moment is associated with the banks that were crashing, but also, of course, with the birth of Bitcoin. So the white paper was published precisely in January 2009, now 10 years ago. And what we are seeing is a slow but steady monetization of the internet. Then, in fact, number 7 is coming up, and we're very excited about that. We don't have so much money anymore, at least much, much less money now than we used to have. The center is now 15 years old, but we're not growing. In fact, we're shrinking, which is also an irony, if you like. Anyway, so we're shrinking, maybe in part because we are dealing with the question of money. Also, not very popular if you ask critical questions about this tendency that is happening, the financialization, monetization of all the activities and transactions on the internet. And maybe you're following it. The Libra initiative of Facebook, is on its way, and this will be one of the main topics at the event in Amsterdam next month. Apart from, by the way, a feminist critique of the blockchain. So we decided that the feminist critique of the blockchain is also something that, of course, it's not very popular. Not a lot of people are working on that in startups or something like that. You can imagine. Social payments, of course, will be one of the main topics. So the monetization, financialization of social media. At the moment, it's still free, right? You will be the last generation that will use social media for free. Very soon, this whole business model of the social media are going to change from data extraction behind your back to a payment system. Think about something like Netflix or something subscription based or based on some kind of extraction, literally, of your money, right? So Facebook is going to extract money from you. Now it's still extracting data, and obviously after Cambridge Analytica, fake news, etc., that model is now getting into a crisis, right? So there will be an end of that kind of advertisement space, and these are the discussions, the big moves and long-term shifts in the internet that we are discussing in this topic. Here you can see a list. Obviously, it's also about white-collar crime. It's also about mafia using these environments. By the way, the next one will be about Eastern Europe and is happening on 24 and 25th of March 2020. We already know that, organized by the art collective group Axioma in Ljubljana in Slovenia. So that number 8 edition of Money Lab will focus on Eastern Europe and also on Ukraine, by the way. But you will know much more about that than I do. as I mentioned already, one of the long-term things that we've been doing is publishing. I come from that field, and when we started, it was very obvious that we were going to do something in this direction. So, and this is the latest one. This is also one of the few things where we get research money in the applied sciences to build prototypes, to really also work with designers and programmers to create new platforms and software in this environment. In the past, this was primarily EPUB. And we've published, manuals for that, and still a lot of people from around the world, they come to us to work on these digital publications. So this is kind of our specialty, but yeah, I see it, I'm a bit in two minds about it, because okay, it's a tool, the content and the networks are also very important, and what we do is we bring them together, all three of them. Here you can see one of the more successful series that we have. It's called Theory on Demand. All these books can be downloaded for free as PDF, EPUBs. You can order them. Even you can order some of them for free, and then you'll get them in the mail here in Ukraine. So in paper. But we don't have so many paper versions. Often we print, let's say, 2,000 or 5,000 of them, and then they disappear because the whole world, wants to have them. And then after half a year or a year, of course, they're gone, and we don't reprint them. It's kind of also based on what we have in our school. We call it postal communism. We can send books for free around the world, so that's very nice. And in this way, we can run a publishing house like this. Another specialized field is that we work with art critics, or critics in general. Now for 25 years, I've been trying to establish and promote this very funny and still strange idea of internet criticism. It hasn't gone anywhere, I think, at least for now. But who knows? These were the first, 30 years. Who knows what the next 30 will bring? But the fact is, critics in general have a very, very hard time. Whether it's literary criticism, film, art, theater, you name it, architecture, design. In all these fields, there are less and less critics. Although everyone says they're necessary and their work is appreciated and so on, how they can survive is a big unknown, right? So the support of critics, we see critics as a profession, and that's why we are in a professional school. We are not academics. We teach and educate young professionals. And we think that critics are also professionals, even though we know that the profession has all but died out, basically, because where can you work, and how can you survive as a critic? This is really, really difficult. So we need to absolutely address the precarious labor situation of the critique. Even if we want to think about something, futuristic, like internet criticism, we are still faced with that quite harsh reality. Another thing that I like and that we work on every now and then is more like what we call the online subjectivity, or the self. This is also an event we had in Rome, and we're building a network of kind of critical selfie theorists. We like selfies a lot, and so they're really part of internet culture. So to theorize the online self is very, very important, and this was already addressed by Svetlana in the beginning, during the introduction, and that's what I'm going to talk about this here. So this is a current, a new publication that I made together with the Dutch designer, Ghert, and made in China, designed in California. You know that phrase. It's on the back of every iPhone, except for the last phrase, of course, criticized in Europe. That's not on the iPhone. So this is kind of a slogan book. You can download it for free. And it's a discussion about the state of design. Now, the Netherlands, where I come from, is very much like Italy. It's a country where people can really be passionate about, what is design and what. It's one of the few things that Dutch people are good at. At least, yeah. Okay, we can discuss that, argue about it, but okay, design is playing an important role in the Dutch society or in the self-understanding of it. Okay, here are some recent things that came out. Also a collaboration with Ned Rossiter on the question of organization, which is very dear to me as an activist. So where is the internet at the moment when we look at the organization of the social? Think of Hong Kong, or think of many other movements, or think of the last elections here in this country. A lot of people, a lot of the political and social movements today are using the internet. Okay, so now we are coming to my latest work, and this is a book called Sad by Design, and it kind of reflects the stagnation or the regression in internet culture, right? So what we see is that a field that has been so dynamic over the past decades is kind of coming to a halt. Everyone feels kind of that we are locked into big platforms. If you're not on Facebook, if you're not on Instagram, or if you're not using WhatsApp, you're out. You can't, communicate anymore with your friends. Of course, okay, there are a few others that we could mention here as well, but the tendency is that we go from a very, let's say, horizontal, decentralized internet, and let's say 20 years later, we find ourselves in a complete opposite situation of centralized platforms and platform capitalism, as it is also called, right? And this fact, which has been theorized already for some years, is now also having, in my understanding, a long-term effect on the users, and particularly on young people who don't feel necessarily that the internet is a space where you escape and you become someone else, and you have a lot of kind of ideas of liberation. You can become another kind of personality. No, the internet is increasingly a dark and a place of enclosures, and this is having a long-term effect. Of course, the effect of that is different for everyone, right? We can't say, okay, this is all happening to everyone, right? Everyone is responding to this, and we're talking here about 4.3 billion people, right? So it's a lot of people. And of course, a lot of cultures, a lot of different social groups, right? So it's very, very difficult to generalize this. However, we can see that this tendency of a move away, let's say, from empowerment to a feeling of enclosure, and exhaustion, a feeling of that you are in a space that you cannot really leave, right? This is also why the resistance against Facebook is so futile, right? Everybody is kind of feels that, okay, we all know what's going on, but there's no way to really escape, right? This is a space without alternatives. And this is really sad, I find, right? And, okay, you can say it's sad, but then what I did is I tried to zoom in a little bit more on let's say, what is this sadness then? What is that? What is this? Okay, so here you can see the book is now out in 5 languages, and here you can see the table of content. Of course, I'm writing essays. I'm not a systematic kind of theorist in that sense. So I write about different things, although I think that overall they are related. So it's not like my work is completely all over the place. No, I don't think so. But also, I have to say, it is diverse. Every book also has a certain range of overall analysis, case studies, and in the end, because I am an activist and this is my background, I always have to ask this question, about what's to be done, what is the strategy, how are we going to deal with that, right? So for me, it's almost impossible to leave that out. Okay, now, so here you can see this is one of the chapters, chapter 5, and this is also kind of my biography, if you like, of the last 30 years. I started off as a media activist in the squatter movement and in the anti-nuclear movement, building networks in the 1990s, and still, of course, because we are the Institute of Network Cultures, so we have invested a lot in this idea of bringing people together in decentralized spaces, giving them tools for self-organization, also as alternatives, of course, to the much larger institution of the political party, the church, the school, etc., right? So the network is really also an alternative to those kind of oppressive 19th, 20th century institutions. And now, in the 21st century, what do we see? We find ourselves suddenly on the platform, right? Now, how did that happen? So this is kind of, you can say, well, it's is it historical? Maybe not. There are, of course, other people who theorize about it, and I'm very much influenced by these 2 books. The one is more speculative, design type. Benjamin Breton, maybe you've heard about him, from California, very much an American thinker, but also American, but then quite different, is Zsuzsanna Zuboff, who this year published The Age of Surveillance Capitalism. And what you just heard, I think, is also very much like a similar analysis of what I give. Maybe, she's using other terms. She's much more traditional and reformist type of American academic. But nonetheless, it's one of the first major books that studies, let's say, Silicon Valley and the political economy of the social media. So I can recommend both of them for different reasons. Also, what is interesting there is that there is now, of course, so much more discussion in comparison to 3, 4, 5 years ago. After Cambridge Analytica, there was also a whole movement of people who left Google, Facebook, Twitter, and so on. And they are now in Washington, and they are creating this Center for Humane Technologies, an NGO, that somehow wants to, take out these very, in their view, dangerous ways in which behavioral science and behavioral modifications are built into the software and the platform without us really understanding, right? And this is an important thing because that's what I'm talking about in SAD by design, because it is precisely these behavioral modifications that produce this kind of feeling that we are getting deeper into it and that there's no way out. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into the chapter itself. By the way, if you want to read the full text, I have put the essay online and published it early this year with a website from Vienna. It's called Eurozine, eurozine.com, and there you find the full essay, the full text of SAD by Design. I wanted to do this because it's very much something that I share and that I have developed together with a big group of young people I work with, all in their 20s. So I could not imagine that something like such an important text would be locked into, some kind of publisher who would own it, and you would be forced to buy a book. This I find really not very contemporary. So if you want to, have a debate, I think it's very important to share this, so it's publicly available online. Okay, there we go. Try and dream, if you can, of a morning app. The mobile has come dangerously close to the psychic bone, to the point where the two can no longer be separated. If only my phone could gently weep. McLuhan's extensions of man has imploded right into the exhausted self. Social media and the psyche have fused, turning daily life into a social reality that, much like artificial reality and virtual reality, is overtaking our perception of the world and its inhabitants. And so this is a term I introduce here, social reality. So you can go into virtual reality, remember? You can use artificial reality. But in fact, the most dominant one we are using is social reality. Social reality is a hybrid between handheld media and the psychic structure of the user. It's a distributed form of social ranking that can no longer be reduced solely to the interests of the state and the corporate platforms. As online subjects, we are implicit, far too deeply involved, right? So this is what I'm saying. We cannot say that we are victims of the social media. This is not a way to look at it. We are involved, and we are actively involved every day, right? We are contributing. And so it's probably a little bit different from previous media in that sense. Even though, of course, in the cultural studies, people have already in the 80s and 90s tried to convince us that we are already actively involved in the construction of when we look television. But this is even more so right now. What happens? Social reality works in a peer-to-peer fashion. It's all about you and your profile. Likes and followers define your social status. But what happens when nothing can motivate you anymore? when all the self-optimization techniques fail, and you begin to carefully avoid these forms of emotional analytics. Compared to others, your ranking is low, and this makes you sad. Even technological sadness is a style, albeit a cold one. The sorrow, no matter how short, is real. This is what happens when we can no longer distinguish between telephone and society. If we can't freely change our profile and feel too weak to delete the app, we're condemned to feverishly check for updates during the brief in-between moments of our busy lives. In a split second, the real-time machine has teleported us out of our current situation and onto another playing field, filled with mini reports we quickly have to investigate. Omnipresent social media places a claim on our elapsed time, our fractured lives. We're all sad in our own very way. As there are no lulls or quiet moments anymore, the result is fatigue, depletion, and the loss of energy. We're becoming obsessed with waiting, right? So what you notice when you study the social media is that waiting is impossible. We can't wait anymore, right? The machine is real time, and time meticulously measured on every app tells us right in your face. It tells us how long the other has been absent, and this hurts. Chronos hurts. Should I post something to attract the attention of the other and show I'm still here? Nobody likes me anymore. As the random messages keep relentlessly piling in, there's no way to hold them, to take a moment and think it all through. Delacroix once declared that every day which is not noted is like a day that does not exist. Diary writing used to fulfill that task. Elements of early blog cultures, maybe you remember the blog, tried to update the diary form for the online realm. But that moment has now passed. Unlike the blog entries of the Web 2.0 era, social media have surpassed the summary stage of the diary in a desperate attempt to keep up with the real-time regime. Instagram stories, for example, bring back the nostalgia of an unfolding chain of events and then disappear at the end of the day, like a revenge act, a satire of ancient sentiments gone by. Storage will make the pain permanent. So social media, you may have noticed, they're very bad at storage. Storage will make the pain permanent. Better forget about it and move on. In the online context, sadness appears as a short moment of indecisiveness, a flash that opens up the possibility of a reflection. And so I define online sadness as the possibility of a reflection. So it's not guaranteed that there is any reflection, but there might be. The frequently used sad label is a vehicle, a strange attractor to enter the liquid mass called social media. Sadness is a container. Each and every situation can be sad and can be called sad. Through this mild form of suffering, we enter the blues of being in the world. When something is sad, for instance, this bottle, I think this bottle is sad, things around it become gray. So the sad bottle has kind of an aura around it and makes other things sad as well. You trust the machine because you know that it makes you feel in control. You want to go from zero to hero, but then your propped up ego implodes and the failure of self-esteem becomes apparent again. The price of self-control in an age of instant gratification is high. We long to revolt against the restless zombie inside us, but we don't know how. Our psychic armor is thin and eroded from within, open to behavioral modifications. Sadness arises at the point we're exhausted by the online world, after yet another app session in which we failed to make a date. We feel exhausted. We try, but fail to make a date, purchased a ticket, and did a quick round of videos. But then the post-dopamine mood hits us hard. The sheer busyness and self-importance of the world makes you feel joyless. After a dive into the network, we're drained and socially awkward. The swiping finger is tired and we have to stop. And I'm going to read the last part of the essay. We overcome sadness not through happiness, but rather, as Andrew Culp insisted, through a hatred of this world. Sadness occurs in situations where the stagnant becoming has turned into a blatant lie. We suffer, and there's no form of absurdism that can offer an escape. Public access to a 21st century version of Dadaism has been blocked. The absence of surrealism hurts. What could our social fantasies look like? Our legal constructs, such as Creative Commons and cooperatives, all we can come up with. And so there's a real lack here of alternatives that I've spoken about before. Instead, it seems we're trapped in smoothness, skimming the surface, always looking for updates, littered with impressions and notifications. The collective imaginary is on hold. What's worse, this banality itself is seamless, offering no indicators of its dangers and distortions. As a result, we've become subdued. Has the possibility of myth become technologically impossible? Instead of creatively externalizing our inner shipwrecks, we project our need for strangeness on humanized robots. Oh, there's this one, yeah, for instance. The digital is neither new or old, but, to use Andrew Culp's phrase, it will become cataclysmatic when smooth surfaces fall apart into tragic ruins. Faced with the limited possibilities of the individual domain, we cannot positively identify with the tragic manifestations of the collective being called social media. We can neither return to mysticism nor to positivism. The naive act of communication is lost, and this is why we cry. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Geert, very much. And I would like to open a conversation.
Yeah, we can
and
switch on the light.
invite-
Yeah.
Invite some questions and comments from the audience.
Mm-hmm.
Just please take a minute, just think about it, and maybe I can ask one question as well. I wonder, my question is about a user.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are to define what user is a particular position, subjectivity, function, something that is designed by someone, etc. So what is a user for you?
Yeah, remember in the very beginning, let's say before there were any graphic user interface, there was not really any user. So any internet user in the archaic form, any user was always by definition an administrator. So there was no distinction between somebody who made up something for you, where you would kind of be a puppet and behave according to the rules of the software that was designed, because you yourself were in charge of that, and and then of course in 90s this idea of the user comes up, but even then the user was somebody, for instance, who needed computer literacy and was needing skills, right? Before you could be a real user, you had to know, maybe you remember from the early computers, PC, you had to know things, commands, and it's still, even if it had graphic interface, you were supposed to know a few things. And then, of course, let's say again 10 years later, we see the rise of UX. We see the rise of user interfaces, and then of course also with that comes an enormous explosion of the amount of users. Right? If you compare users amount in 90s to now, right? In the 90s there were only a couple of 100 million people. Now we are 4 billion. Right? This is a huge difference. But that difference, of course, is facilitated by the fact that these users have got nothing to say anymore. They don't have, in fact, that they have been de-skilled. I work in a media school, where we teach social media marketing and all this. And there we notice every year there's a de-skilling. So kids come in with less and less computer skills, which is completely opposite of what we say, like our generation, millennials, Generation Z, etc. They're all fabulous. They know a lot. They can. They have grown up with it. No, in fact, they have less and less skills. So that is something about, let's say, the rise of the user. Yeah.
Thank you. I have a question about criticism.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
What kind of relationship do you see between the days of criticism as a profession, you mentioned, and the rise of Facebook and other social media?
Yeah. I mean, I have yet to meet the first Facebook critic. Even though, it is a medium that is used also here in Ukraine, everywhere you go, by millions, if not billions. I forgot. Facebook has what? Please tell me. Anyone knows? Is it 1.7 billion? Oh no. Wait, I know. It's 2.3 billion. Yeah, people. right? So it's a system used every day by 2.3 billion people. Why this space, which is the biggest media space we ever had in world history, has no people that kind of work on it, right? What we have are social media marketeers that kind of, work there as professionals to sell products inside it, right? They create advertisement and so on, so on. And of course, of that army, there's quite a lot. There's hundreds of thousands of professionals working worldwide on that. But we should not maybe consider them critics. It would be great, if people who work in marketing would somehow become critics. It would be wonderful. But I'm still waiting for, even in that scene, for people to come out and say, what they're really doing inside these companies. So even there, we need whistleblowers and so on, so on. People, who tell us what the real trade is all about. So there's no trace whatsoever of critics. What we can say is that there is moral critique, right? And I've got nothing to do with that. People say if you put your phone away for the weekend, digital detox kind of thing, and then you will be more happy, or maybe you will not be happy, you will be, desperate. So what kind of, I don't think that the critique should be self-punishment. So I want to make a very clear distinction in my work between these two things. So I never tell you to leave Facebook. This is complete and utter nonsense, right? I'm not doing that here.
You know that maybe 10 or 15 years ago it was a big optimism, maybe later, a big optimism because of internet, social media and so on. We all will be free, we will communicate with every point on the earth, every person could do this. Now you tell us a lot about pessimism, but do you still see any optimistic way, any progressive way of the global network of the technology and so
of course, thanks so much for that question.
Something more optimistic.
Okay, because the last thing, I'm not selling pessimism here. It's not a product. And anyway, I'm activist myself, and this is still what we do. So we are still working on the alternatives, and in fact, the list of alternatives is growing. So I can bring good news. Yes. So there's a lot of kind of, but what we can't see is that any of these alternatives are really reaching a critical mass. So they, and this is the problem. The problem is this kind of cloud where people are locked in and they feel they cannot escape, right? And when you said about 10 years ago, well, 10 years ago is precisely the time when, for instance, we still had a sequence. People came from Friendster, they came from GeoCity, they tried a little bit this and there, they moved on, and people were very happy to move around that time to Facebook, right? And so people, so the online masses, they moved to Facebook, and that was a normal next step. But there was nothing after Facebook, right? People didn't move on to, and we activists were, in the first years, we were kind of still expecting that. So we were still optimistic, that something like that, okay, well, this is a certain phase, people will get tired of it. The young people will get tired of Facebook in particular, which is true and not true, because that indeed has happened. They moved to Instagram and WhatsApp, of course. But these three are integrated. And especially when you read the plans for Libra, you will see that Libra is a plan for the integration, of course, of all three of them. So it doesn't really matter anymore, what you use. It's all the same brand anyway. So but the optimism, I think, is still there. But it's a small group of people, and who has been working now for 10 years in believing that something like a public infrastructure of the internet is still possible. Okay.
I have a brief question to follow up just what you just said. And it is, I wonder whether would you think that it's Facebook is that monopoly and that power that blocks certain alternative or makes them less possible or something like that? Or it's a problem with the internet itself, with the internet infrastructure, right? So, I mean, I hear some thinkers believe that for those alternatives, we actually need a different internet with the different values, possibilities, and other things inscribed in it. So,
Well, we are going to hear tomorrow Niels. Niels ten Oever. He is going to speak about that lower level of internet protocols, internet governance, and he will address this very question. Is there something on that level, on the basic level, the ground level, still possible or not? If you speak to people who are working in that field, mostly technical engineers, they will say that even that space has been corporatized. So the corporate takeover, especially of Google and Facebook in particular, of the space of protocols, but also the data centers and the cables. So you need to add the three up. You will see that this space is already not public anymore. There was a really nice, quite precise documentary on Dutch television last Sunday, and this is about the governance structure of those who decide which emojis are coming on your telephone, right? You all use emojis, I suppose. Well, there's a limited amount of them, and there's a committee in California where all these companies are sitting, and they decide, what emoji you are going to use. And that explains it all, where we are at the moment.
Maybe one last brief question.
Two. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm very interested in your idea about social media like an ideology, and I read about it in one of the texts. Unfortunately, I don't remember what its name, but I saw that you had a chapter about it in your YouTube.
It's the same text, You can read it on eFlux, in fact. Yeah.
Okay, and I think that here in Ukraine we have a very interesting ground for this idea. I mean that here in Ukraine, in this post-Soviet territory, in this borderline country, we came from post-Soviet ideology and came in the middle of social media like an ideology. And when the other world outside the Ukraine leading this tragedy, the loss of reality, here we have a very interesting situation where we have no reason to And what do you think about this? Maybe we can have some, I don't know, Ukrainian optimistic about this situation.
Well, I don't think you should be optimistic about it. However, I think the use by politicians and the political class as such by the social media is changing constantly. So we should not try to focus somehow only on a very, let's say, narrow definition of fake news. The internet in that sense is still dynamic, in that there are multiple ways to influence people, and the way to influence them works best if it's not noted. So we can discuss it, yes, and you can even here you can be more aware of it, what politicians are doing. But in fact, especially let's say the more sophisticated marketing techniques, or as it is called these days, the techniques of behavioral modification are such that we don't really register them. And this is the problem. The internet works in real time, but we only find out, maybe sometimes, when we're very fast, 3 months later. If it's very subtle, we find out only 2 years later, right? And so, this kind of delay and this problem of time and the time delay that we have to process. We need investigative journalists, for instance, to do this job. We need also technically trained, scholars, people that are sometimes called data journalists or hackers who are working, together with you, with artists or scholars. Yeah. One of the problems there is time. So to reconstruct this takes time. And so, and this is what makes me sad. It means that us critical scholars, we are by definition historians, right? Because the moment it comes out, the way to influence people is already no longer really potent and influential. And this is a more structural problem that we are facing if we want to tackle your problem.
And the very last question of this session.
Thank you. Your speech, you mentioned that it is hard time for criticism, and my question is, what defines a good critic, and how can I recognize one among all those publishers?
Yeah, okay, that's very good. And this is, first of all, what we have to ask ourselves. Us being teachers and working in this field. First of all, I think we have to understand that there is a specific kind of mix necessary between the humanities and technical awareness, right? Or social science people, sociologists or political scientists with a technical awareness, right? So I think this was discussed already in 90s, like if this kind of technical intelligentsia will rise, these will be people who need skills from both sides, because we cannot just be kind of an outsider without any technical knowledge of this field, right? This is not possible. We are not, let's say, observing outsiders. The critic, for instance, also in the theater, in the literature, in the film, right? You need to know the genre. You need to know the actors. You need to know the historical references. Well, in this field, it's precisely the same. If you have no technical knowledge, it will become very difficult.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Why do think that it's, it will be not so important in the future? Why do you so it's making sense? Or
Yeah.
what is
Yeah, that's what I think, and that's why I also fear that the same will be the case with Zsuzsanna Zubov's work. You know, that in a way she has written the history of data extraction. Because, with the upcoming financialization and monetization of the internet, the business model will be an entirely different one, and will no longer be just based on extracting data of a user behind the back without you knowing it. For instance, the social contract so far was very simple. I give you the service for free. I, Mark Zuckerberg, give you for free. You don't have to pay. And in exchange, you give me all your private data, right? This is the basic social exchange. Has been active for 20, 25 years. This is now coming to an end. And everybody knows why. Yeah? Because of all the abuse and so on, right? I mean, how many years of scandals can we still have? Yeah. Even the next, presidential election in America, it's not quite feasible that this is going to happen, right? Trump will not be able to, for instance, repeat what he did, in 16. There's no way. Yeah? So there is an end to that, and that also means that the question of who is the owner of the next business model is going to be an even more important question. Thank you very much.